So for those of you that do not know HAE, we are a global member of 15,000 dedicated Harvard alumni, all aiming to support experienced and aspiring entrepreneurs. Our new workshop series is aimed to promote and guide startups through some of their most difficult challenges, from fundraising to marketing to tax incentives and finance. Today we host Ari Palmer. And a fun fact about Ari is that she is very lucky and has actually won $1,000 multiple times from the Wheel of Fortune slot machine. And with that said, I'll pass the stage over to Ari to tell you a little bit more about herself and the benefits of recognizing tax incentives.
Thanks so much, Corey, and the rest of the team and everyone that's here joining today. Really excited to be here. And yeah, I thought I might throw you all off with that little gambling fun fact. I would not classify myself as a gambler whatsoever, but grew up loving Wheel of Fortune around dinner time. So the few times that I have been to Vegas, I just go right up to that slot machine, and for whatever reason, it likes me back. So if anyone needs to bring me to Vegas, we can go play those slots. So today we're going to go over the tax incentives your startup deserves. Most of us do not get into business building these wildly passionate businesses that we're creating and technologies that we're creating, thinking about our accounting, let alone our tax. But there are significant dollars that can be saved along the way as you're building your companies if you just take a quick look. So today we're going to go over one of the more popular tax credits, the research and development tax credits, and I'll also touch upon a couple of other savings opportunities that are been increasingly more popular for young businesses. So with that, I'm going to jump right in, but we have definitely reserved time for ample Q&A. So definitely encourage you to pop any questions you might have along the way into the chat, and we'll try to get all of them answered by the end. I've made this presentation so that it's pretty swift. I promise these finances will not put you to sleep. If not, I owe you a luck of the wheel on Wheel of Fortune. All right, so just general overview. What are tax credits? Who qualifies? What expenses qualify? What should you be looking at year round? How it works, and then that Q&A. So did you know that the government reserves billions of dollars every year to companies investing in innovation? Well, they do. And it's actually estimated that over 80% of companies of all sizes miss out on free money on the table. That can be through government SBIR grants, that can be through emergency relief credits. You've probably been hearing, maybe some of you have taken the PPP or the ERC. That's new. That's a huge new benefit for startup companies. But the research and development tax credit is arguably the largest and really the longest program that's been in existence. It's actually been around since the early 80s. And so it's the #1 government funded program for early stage businesses now, because it has finally been made a permanent fixture of the tax code, which really means two things. You can plan around it and you know that you're going to better benefit. And if you're building cool technologies and products, then you should be taking a look. One thing that's really unique about this credit and why it's gained a lot of popularity in the last few years is that it's directly proportional to the uniqueness of your business. It's not that you have to apply and compete against others, like maybe traditional grants or bids with the government. It's completely reliant on what you're doing and what you're spending money on. And you can actually think about getting it every single year that you continue to develop and improve upon your technologies or products. And why it's really gained some buzz in the startup world is that now startups can better benefit from the program regardless of profitability. So we know it's costly, it takes time to get into a profitable state, and a lot of startups will say if ever. So we're going to share with you how you can get relief in the near term as you're building your business. So why again is it important? Well, just this past year, over $18 billion were claimed by companies nationwide at federal and state levels. the big guys are doing it. You read every year, how does Tesla not pay any taxes, or Amazon or Apple, right? They're leveraging significant tax incentives, and the R&D credit is one of the bigger programs that they're making sure they're all over every year. So really want to encourage you to take a look at this because you could be leaving money on the table. And who wants to do that? So in a nutshell, the R&D credit, and we're going to go into the types of expenses that qualify. It's really going to offset two potential avenues of your taxes, depending on when you were incorporated and what your revenue looks like. It's going to either offset your payroll taxes or your traditional income taxes. So there's been a lot of confusion in the space around payroll tax credits being different from the R&D tax credit, but it's really about just how you're applying that R&D credit that differs. So whether it's an income tax offset, that's going to be a dollar for dollar reduction against any of your federal taxes owed, potentially state credits, depending on where you're operating. One really unique strategy about this credit is that if you don't use these credits in the year in which you generate them, you don't lose them. They carry forward for up to 20 years. So a lot of businesses like to fold this credit into their planning because it's essentially an asset on your books, right? These credits that can be banked just like your losses. And in many cases, if there's an exit opportunity, if you're a pass-through, maybe that can limit some of the capital gains you might pay. If you're a C corporation, maybe some of those credits are going to transfer to the new owner. So it could be leverage in the sale of your company. For the payroll taxes, which I think majority of the folks are curious about here today, they're gonna reduce any of your employer FICA taxes. So no matter what business you are, if you've got payroll, you have to pay FICA tax as an employer, and that's essentially 6.2% of your payroll. So the R&D credit can actually eliminate that liability in the near term. So just think what you could do by boosting your operating costs by over 6% really easily could be a huge savings. So who qualifies? Generally speaking, any company that's developing or improving products, technologies, software, inventions, technology, you should be taking a look. The core activities generally need to be in the hard sciences or computer science. So the top industries that you see here span across technology, manufacturing, life sciences, and engineering. Those are the largest claimants of the credit, but there are so many sub-industries that qualify. So if you're in a very specific space, don't think just because you're not in health tech that you're not going to get some benefit. So there are so many industries that are overlooked, even from wineries, breweries, and distilleries to AI and blockchain, crypto, fitness wearables, government contractors. We work with consumer packaged good companies. Everyone wants their chips to taste like Cheetos and be super yummy, but they've got to be GMO, organic, have a shelf life with no preservatives. That takes a lot of food engineering, right? So there's so many intricacies in industries that, if you're developing or improving upon a product, you have something special going on. Let's take a look. So how do you pre-qualify your company? So really, a lot of times people just think, okay, if I spend money on this, then I qualify. But it's really important to go through these few questions and ask yourself, are you developing a technology? Are your core activities based in the hard sciences or computer science? Is there some uncertainty or risk regarding the outcome of your projects? And are you able to demonstrate some type of process of experimentation or testing along the way? As founders, we're so positioned to only share the highlight reel, but the truth of the matter is we fail along the way and we try new things and we test out new methodologies, and all that time and expense can be attributed to R&D, right? So there's no contingency on this credit around success in the marketplace. you don't get the credit if you're just because you are wildly profitable and you're selling. You can be getting the R&D credit even before you're in the market. So just a note there. So kind of overall, we want to kind of take a look at, are you asking yourself over the course of the year, over the course of your projects, can we do it? How can we do it? What's it going to look like? And then the steps to overcome, that uncertainty. So at the core of the credit, you want to know, all right, what am I spending money on that's actually going to yield a result? How am I going to reduce my taxes and ease cash flow and extend runway, right? Well, you'll hear a lot of times that the credit is wage driven, meaning that any W-2 payroll that you have internally that's directly involved with your development efforts is going to qualify. And it's also really important to note that we can take a supervisory and a support level approach as well. That's something that gets missed a lot of the times. But we know with startups, folks wear a lot of hats, and maybe they don't have a director of engineering title, but they are instrumental in strategizing product roadmap. They're taking customer requirements. They're testing alternatives. They're leading those efforts. A portion of their time can qualify. So it's not an all or nothing situation between employees. We can get to a reasonable estimation of time of what's on product versus kind of maybe what's on SG&A, if you will. US-based contractors and services. This is a big bucket of expenses, particularly for young startups. A big question we get is, okay, I use contractors and I pay a US entity, but the work is actually performed overseas. Unfortunately, that does not count. The IRS is encouraging rewarding job growth here in the US. So we know that talent is global. It keeps things lean. You're not going to get completely disqualified for having distributed teams elsewhere overseas. We just can't pick up that expense for the purposes of calculating the US R&D credit. But such that any contractors are here in the US stateside, we can pick those up. This could also be to my organic chip company scenario. This could be, a food science engineer that contributed to a project along the way. So it doesn't have to be, for the length of your business. It can be for just certain projects and one-offs as well. Supplies, so more so in the hardware space. These are going to be any materials that are consumed in your prototyping phases. And then for software, we work with a lot of kind of traditional B2B SaaS type companies. The development cloud expenses, once you burn through those amazing credits that I know even HAE has kind of lined up for you as a perk, they rack up fast. So expenses as they relate to your AWS or your Google Cloud or Heroku on your development and staging environments, we can take a portion of those as well. So generally speaking, if you were to add up all of those expenses, you'd be getting about a 10% return. And I'll show you kind of what that quick math looks like here in a moment. Just want to briefly kind of touch on what's not considered R&D. Generally speaking, it's going to be market research. It's going to be any research conducted outside of the US. It's also going to be funded research. So we have to take a particular look if someone has federal grant funding, even though we encourage it. We want to make sure the government doesn't want you kind of to double dip. They also want to make sure no two companies, if you're maybe working with another company on a project, we need to kind of see who has the rights to the credit, because they want to make sure that no two companies are claiming the same dollar. And then research after commercial production, that comes up every once in a while, but we know that companies are continually improving upon their products. So in most cases, if you have something in the market, we know that you're generally, or you're probably continuing to fine tune it and make improvements to it. Next up, This big question again, but I'm not profitable, or I'm in losses. Well, if you're a startup as less than 5 years old, and there is an exception here, it's really off of when your gross receipts start. So a lot of times health, life sciences companies, they're able to kind of go a little bit past this 5-year mark. But for the most part, the rule is if you're 5 years old or less and you have less than 5 million in revenue for the taxable year, you're going to be able to utilize these credits as a payroll tax offset up to $250,000 a year. So let's just say your startup has 5 full-time software engineers, developers. Let's say we're always looking at last year's number for this year's tax return and this year's liabilities. So let's just say 2020, you had $500,000 in W-2 payroll. That would make you eligible for $50,000 in savings. If you had the same payroll here in 2021, your FICA tax liability, that 6.2% I mentioned a few slides ago, you're going to have $31,000 in taxes. So that $50,000 can totally eliminate that liability. So now you've just netted $31,000 and you've got $29,000 remaining. So if you continue to hire more people, those credits are there for you, or they'll roll forward into next year. One thing that's really important with all incentives and grants is documentation. It's really important, especially if you ever get reviewed, or what the bad word is audited, right? Is that you've got ample documentation on what you're doing. We know that majority of y'all are using project management systems or keeping pretty good track of your communication on projects. So there's no there's no exact requirement of what you have to have, but these are typically the documents that we're gathering from our clients when we're backing up these R&D tax credit studies, because it's really important that when you claim the R&D credit, it's not only just a financial calculation, but it's also a substantiation of what your personnel worked on over the course of the year. So if you were to ever be reviewed, really the only reason why credits ever get adjusted or worst case disallowed would be lack of documentation, or the inability to prove what occurred over the course of the year, and lack of nexus, or the ability to tie employees to the projects they worked on. So wouldn't want to worry you here, but whatsoever, we see documentation in all forms or fashion, but these are just kind of the more popular documents. So let's say you want to take the R&D credit for 2020. You haven't filed your tax return yet. The R&D tax credit is reported on a form called 6765 that gets included in your tax return. And let's say you're eligible for the payroll tax offset. There's a form that essentially connects to your quarterly 941s with your payroll processor. So that form gets provided to them. And then whenever working with someone to help you with this initiative, you want to be sure that you have some documentation and some report in addition to the forms for filing. It might not ever get looked at, but it sure is important if it does, because as you can imagine, it just would become a big scramble for information. People change, projects evolve, if you had to go back and look for it years down the road. So what does a typical process look for applying these credits? Now, I gave a lot of information, but I want you to know that it's meant to be not super obtrusive on your business. The IRS is actually pretty reasonable in many regards, in that they just want to see proof of your activities, your expenses, that it's well documented and properly reported. So we follow over at TaxTaker a quick 5-step process where we're gathering each kind of component of the credit to ensure that you've got an audit-ready deliverable, if you will, but most importantly, that you're getting the money that you deserve. We want the fastest path for you to benefit, right? To ease that cash flow, extend runway so you can reinvest in your business and grow it the way you've always wanted to. So just kind of quick timeline or path to savings. And this is typically true with most types of incentives and savings kind of tracks is you're filing the incentive with your tax return. You're either immediately offsetting your income taxes if there's anything owed there, or your payroll application begins. So depending on your payroll provider, it can be as soon as the next time you run payroll, or it can be as soon as the quarter after in which you filed. So for purposes today, it's May 20th. If you haven't filed your tax return, there would be motivation to file by the end of June so that you could get it the next quarter. Or if you're using a payroll provider like Gusto, they actually have an opportunity for you. As soon as you file a return, we load these credits right up into your system and you're getting it on your next pay cycle. We have had the pleasure of supporting many Harvard alumni startups, Factor Hardware, Take Shape, just recently did a feature on Struct Club, awesome female-led company that's really just all about mental health, physical health, and uplifting people. These were all super fun companies to work with, and there was hundreds of thousands of dollars saved, which was such a win for all these companies, extending months of runway. Hoping that this session enables many of the folks here today to be able to save money just like these companies. And then in takeaway, again, your startup doesn't have to be profitable to qualify. Timing is everything. If you've already filed your return, there is the ability to go back. You do have to amend your return. Unfortunately, you can't get that payroll offset. That has to be on an originally filed return. So a little bit of extra motivation there. If you are looking to offset your payroll taxes here in 2021, you can only do so if you haven't yet filed your 2020 return. If you have, don't worry, 2021 is going to be available to you likely. Really just encouraging you to use your tax code to your advantage. We don't expect you to be accounting experts or let alone tax experts, but we really want to let you know that there's so many proactive advisors. HAEs line them up. I know Joe Ferris was on last week or is coming up. There's HR, there's lean legal resources, and we're always talking about other credits like the ERC and PPP updates and grants. So we like to just have this immediate hub for you to just get the information and the education you need. So just know that through the HAE platform and Perk Network, we're always just a quick call or assessment away. And with that, I would love to open the room, Corey, to a Q&A. I think we got a few questions leading into the event, but not sure if you want to go ahead and ask that or if any of them got popped up into the chat.
Absolutely. I didn't see any in the chat, but right now, if any of you guys want to, raise your virtual hand like Tom just did, feel free to do that. And Ari will kind of just call on you in the order that she sees. Ari?
Oh,
yes. Tom.
Yes. You might want to take down the, oh, you did it. You read my mind. I didn't quite catch it. Does your firm help companies do this, your firm, or is that a software that they use?
We do. So we actually have a technology platform of our own to help speed up the process to apply for these credits, secure, document, and report. So we have real life accountants and engineers behind the scenes that hold our clients' hands through the process, but we've built a piece of technology that helps immensely with the data gathering. So it's actually our goal that our startup founders spend about an hour or so or less to get this knocked out.
And by the way, some of my companies are doing it themselves. They may be not doing it right. A few have looked at, been approached by firms that will charge 25% of the benefit or take it out of so no cash up front, but they take it out of the recoveries. Where does your firm fall in this?
Yeah, so we also are built on the success-based model. So nothing due up front. We actually charge 15% of the credit because we're able to pass along that savings with the investment we've made in putting tech to a lot of the processes of this incentive. And then also HAE Perks is going to have an additional little exclusive discount too. So additional savings there, but yeah, nothing up front. We always, first of all, just want to make sure there's benefit to be made. We don't even want companies to have to go through the whole process if they're not going to have meaningful benefit at the end. So always encourage.
So you interview the company first. So if I were to go to the company, what would I say the first step for them to do is?
Yeah, so the first step would be to just book a discovery call with our team. They're 10, 15 minutes long. They're super easy to go through. And by the end, they should have a good expectation of what's on the table.
Fine. And so it's a good chance to survey the companies and see anything that remotely applies.
Yeah.
Where they are they using this? And if not, why?
Yeah, and we always love to have early conversations too, because more so we find that it's not always a matter of if they qualify, but when does it make the most sense?
Yeah. So for instance, one of my companies has been paying everybody on 1099s. So it sounds like they just need to keep accumulating their qualified expenses, but they don't qualify for either of the credit application streams. So they got to wait until they can do that.
Yeah, so such that they start making hire or convert anyone over to payroll, those contractor costs can still yield a credit that then could reduce liabilities. So if there's a conversion event or, that might be near-term benefit, or they could still generate a credit based on their contractors, but they would just have to be banked for future use.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Tom. Looks like we just
maybe. What about other tax credits beyond the R&D credit? Do you help companies pursue those?
Yeah, so lately we have a lot of accounting partners that have been big champions for our startup clients. So for the most part, they've been handling many of kind of the more popular programs as of lately, like PPP. ERC is really big right now. If you have companies that have started after February 15th, 2020, they can get up to $100,000 if they have under $1 million in revenue. So that's big. We've been really big facilitators there, and it really doesn't take much time to do that. We've actually been just working in conjunction with our accounting partners to help those companies get it. And I would advise to stay away from big percentages there. I've seen some folks that have been charging some large percentages there, and it's not as much work as at the R&D credit.
What does the ERC stand for?
The Employee Retention Credit. And we actually have an updated newsletter going out in the next couple of days about it as well. So if you want to just visit our website, TaxTaker, and subscribe to our newsletter, we try to have on the beat updates about all that good stuff.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Hope to connect with you after.
Sure.
Ari, can I ask you a question? Because probably it's for a startup that don't know when is the right time to start. That is very important. If you can just elaborate a little bit more on that. So when is the right time to start? You definitely have to incorporate. So you have to register somewhere. Mm-hmm. You have to pay payroll, right? And you must have some level of expenses beside payrolls, like paying AWS, correct? Or paying Google.
Yeah, it could be any of the 4 expenses, W-2 payroll, contractor, supply expenses or some of those AWS costs, those are the biggest kind of operational expenses, with wages being the driver of the credit. They hold the most weight in the calculation. Contractors take a haircut to a W-2 wage earner. So I saw that there was a question in chat about operational expenses. So it's really wages, contractors, potentially supplies if they're in a kind of hardware true product kind of space, and then for software, those cloud costs. So generally speaking, you know, if you've got payroll, you know, you should definitely be looking at it because you could reduce your payroll taxes. But if you don't have payroll and you think, you know, you're going to have to pay income taxes, those other expenses could very much yield a credit. So the best time to be kind of going through this exercise, we always love year-end planning, you know, kind of end of the year when you kind of know when, where your finances are kind of land, but also before you file your tax return. Because we've created a system, you know, that's a 10-15-minute call. And then from there, if they qualify, we're connecting to financials and project information. Typically, depending on our clients' timelines, we're knocking this out within a couple of weeks to make sure that the credits are included in the tax return for filing. So the urgency for right now would be, if anyone hasn't filed their 2020 return, we would just want to make sure we should take a look. And if there's not immediate benefit for them, then we would circle back maybe come year end. And I've got
Thank you. That's really great. So right before paying the taxes as well. Awesome. I think we got a couple of questions here in the chat. But guys, just this is a workshop, so just feel free to speak up, turn on your mic. Okay, it's a safe environment. The workshop are really meant to build connection with our great community of perks, so you can get to know them and you can trust them more, and definitely go to them as soon as you you need something. So feel free to also unmute yourself and ask the question.
And no hard feelings too, if we have anyone that's shy. I know a lot of times I ask my best questions after the Zoom sesh, so I know my info is going to be available. So do know that our team, you'll have access to afterwards. Did see a question about home expenses. Typically those will not qualify for the R&D credit, but if you speak with your accountant, bookkeeper, many times you can take a home office deduction to an extent. So it would definitely fill them in on what your situation looks like working from home, because there's likely a deduction for you there. I think they've tightened the rules up on that a little bit, but with everyone from home, they should be doling it out. We're spending a lot more on power and Wi-Fi, aren't we? I know our water bill has gone up.
And Ari, if people are a little bit shy to speak up, that's totally fine. Feel free to access the pre-submitted questions too.
Sure thing. Yeah, let me pull some of those up. So someone actually mentioned that they're already claiming the R&D credit. So that is awesome. I'm really glad to hear it. Sometimes people are surprised that they're like, wait, you're happy if someone's not working with you? Of course, we want everyone to be taking the R&D credit, whether they're working with us or not, although we hope to be your provider at some point. But they ask, okay, that they're claiming the R&D credit and you're using it as payroll taxes, but they want to know about keeping more adequate record keeping to defend their credits. So that's a great point. Mentioned on the call that documentation is key. So if you're using a project management system like Asana, or even in your engineering efforts, Jira, if you've got user stories, any of those can be really great records. If you take meeting minutes, or you've got product roadmap specifications for some of your projects, all those can be very adequate pieces of information to just make sure you're continuing to log. And I always recommend, just, on a monthly or quarterly basis, just kind of taking a quick check of inventory there, maybe just pulling a report on what was worked on, and just saving it, because contemporaneous documentation is ideal with the IRS, meaning, as it's happening, instead of, having to go back and recreate it. That's just a pain for everyone. We find that it's much easier to just kind of quickly save what you've worked on over the last few weeks or few months versus what did I do all of last year and where is that info? Because as you can imagine, years go by and you're like, oh no, where was that? And you're so far down the path that it's hard to distinguish which project is which and what year. Another question is, for a pre-seed company, what length of runway is expected and or reasonable? I'm not sure if that is related to tax credits or just more generally speaking. I'm not sure if this company is actively fundraising or looking for credits or grants to extend their runway. But ideally, I would say generally most companies want to make sure that they have somewhere between 12 to 15 months of runway. That's kind of that safe spot. That's not always possible. There's lots of startups, that are just, they're running month to month, but such that, if you're bootstrapping or you have investment, having, a year's worth of runway is definitely ideal, because it gives you a little bit of room if you have to pivot or if, any big things change in the market, i.e. all of 2020 was a total shakeup. Another question was more around valuations. I definitely have seen that there's been some frothy valuations across a lot of different industries. And this question kind of asks, do you think the current boom in seed stage valuation is sustainable? I will not claim to be a valuation expert by any means. I think trend-wise, we continue to see bigger inflated rounds in some of the suspected areas, i.e. the coasts. But now with companies nationwide, with teams remote, I think we're going to see a lot of bigger valuations in non-coastal areas, middle of America. But I'm not sure if it's sustainable or not for seed stage. I know they vary quite differently depending on industry and area, geography.
Great. Well, guys, if you don't have any more questions, that's bad, because Ari's here for you. And something I can say as a startup funder, we never paid attention. We pay attention a lot in building the business, but also taxes and accounting is a big part of how you're building the business. And it's very important also when you want to fundraise, investor might come back and say, well, why didn't you do this? You would have saved money, and saving money is the same thing of receiving money from an investor. So why don't we, John, I see you on the webcam, so that's nice. Why don't we just try to see, what do you do? What your startup does? Why are you here in this webinar today?
Sure. We have a company that's a little past startup stage that extracts data from arbitrary documents. Our big customers in healthcare, but we have customers in other verticals as well. We have been taking the R&D credit, but I want to, that was my question. I definitely want to improve our record keeping in case we're ever audited or asked about it. So I'll be following up for some advice on that.
Awesome, John. Love to connect. I also saw a question about how far you can go back to claim an R&D credit. The statute federally is 3 years. So if there's money on the backside available, there could be potential refund opportunities or credit that could be carried forward. Unfortunately, the way the law is written with this payroll tax credit is you can't go back to claim back your credits for payroll taxes. That has to be included in an original return. But nevertheless, that's also something we can help you kind of just put a spotlight on to see if there's money on the backside, what does it look like, and is it going to be meaningful to your bottom line? As a C corporation, if you're a C corporation, we've actually helped companies. There's kind of a special rule for C corps. If they've never turned $1, you can go back essentially to day one. So I've worked on some interesting projects where I've gone 7, 8, 9 years back, and they've credited all that forward, and it was really, really attractive to an acquirer. So that was a fun project. You may have operational. So personnel are definitely the largest cost that could be counted, wages, contractors, but we do see some pretty heavy costs associated with supplies, if you have any types of devices or hardware, and then those cloud costs, if you're in the software space, if you've got AWS or Google Cloud, Heroku, those stack up fast.
Yes, they do.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they go missed all the time.
Do you also advise companies on 1202 tax credit or qualified small business?
Yeah, so we don't, but we do have a couple of partners that do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so always happy to provide those resources as well. Trying to just be hyper specialized in this one area.
Oh, and so we should sign up for your newsletter. And
yes, I'm going to add you. I got it in the chat, so I'll save you a step.
And we prod our companies to do this, and yours is less expensive than most of the other advisors. So
Yeah.
I didn't recommend this. And I think the only thing we don't have is if you put up your contact information, we just, tell companies to contact you and do their 15-minute discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Corey's going to be sending that out, right, Corey?
Yep, I'll follow up right after this meeting with the slides from today and all of our contact information, so you guys can talk to her and ask any questions. I also see Alfredo.
Yes, hi. You may have covered this earlier on. I'm in Miami, by the way. I'm involved with a company doing carbon capture using microalgae. And we have a collaboration with the University of Miami with the material science and engineering lab. And so we pay a fee to them on an annual basis. Would that be covered or eligible as an R&D expense?
It likely could be. We would want to just take a closer look at the terms of the contract to be certain. But we do work with a number of companies that work with institutions and universities. So we just have to double check the terms.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, of course, Alfredo. Yeah, please ping me after. And then, yeah, Tom, to your point as well, we are less expensive because we put technology to this, but it isn't going to compromise quality. We've got Big 4 experts, domain experts that have been doing this for 10, 15 years on staff. And then we also offer audit protection at no extra cost too. So we believe it's really important that when you're working with an advisor, that is going to show up for you and your clients, that they're going to be around to defend that client if anything comes up too, because who wants to deal with the IRS? I guess we do. We need to, because we know things are going to hold water.
Great. I'm going to drop off, so have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Great. I think we have just one last question, and then I guess we can also hold the meeting.
Oh, yes. So this is super popular. This came up a few moments ago about PPP and ERC. There's new rules and new opportunities with the ERC. There just became a really big improvement for young companies. So we have been actually inundated with this so much that we've actually tapped a few of our accounting partners that work with a lot of our startup clients to actually assist with this. So this is something that they're offering assessments for free and can definitely help out with. So I will, if you want to drop in your email, I'll make sure that you get that update, because we actually have a specific update on ERC going out within the next day or so. Just proofread it.
Thanks. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it gets confusing. It really does. Gusto has a pretty nice chart that maps out if you qualify or not, that just visually kind of makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, it gets confusing for sure.
Thanks.
Okay, well, it looks like we're sort of running low on questions, and if it's okay with you, Ari, I think we've ran up to a good point to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much, Corey and Stefania and everyone here. It really was a treat to be with you. Thanks for bringing attention to these incentives. We appreciate you helping build the megaphone and being such proactive advisors to your group. We're excited to be a resource for y'all for the long run.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate. That was a great presentation. I loved it.
Good. So I don't owe you Wheel of Fortune money then.
Well,
Yeah.
it could never hurt. But we do encourage everybody to become HAE members so that you are eligible for perks such as companies like TaxTaker and many more. All of these workshops that we've been offering the last 6 Thursdays are all going to offer fantastic discounts, free services, consultation hours, and more. So we really encourage you to become HAE members. Plus, you'll have access to all of our meetings and our office hours and our events. And I will make sure to share Ari's slides and her contact information as well after this meeting.
Thanks.
Awesome. Ari, thank you so much. This was
Thank
great.
you.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Sorry.